Hello and welcome to our very special Downstream Q&A, AMA. I don't know, there'll be some other letters in there as well. Aaron, how you doing, broski?
I'm doing very well, Ash. I was watching you and Michael just a moment ago on Novara Live. My favourite show is the Monday. It's just a shame. It's just a shame we can't have more of those. We need to get Ash Sarkar working a 7-day week.
Already my partner is like, do you think you could just maybe work a little bit less? So you're going to have to take it up with him because he occasionally likes to see my face not on a laptop. But no such luck for him this evening because we are going to be taking your questions for the next hour or so. So please get those in. As you well know, we are celebrating the launch of our new Clips channel. Look, there it is. There should be a little address popping up somewhere. Or I don't know, maybe you're already on it. I don't know how this works. Gary just tells me what to say. So please make sure that you're subscribed. It does really, really help us. And every subscriber enables us to do more of this work. And you know what? Clicking is free. The link's in the chat. And if you want to, if subscribing is not enough for you and you've just got more to give, why not become a Novara Media supporter? You can sign up at novara.media/support today. Your support is crucial to us. We need it to do our work. We don't have any venture capital. We don't have any billionaires. All we have is you. So Aaron, I've got question number 1 for you. Are you ready? Have you prepared yourself spiritually?
Yeah.
It's time to make your confession. Question 1. What were your favorite Downstream moments? And do you have any particularly crazy behind the scenes stories for us?
Crazy behind the scenes stories. I mean, just with Slavoj Žižek, I have, probably several dozen. I'll come to that in a minute. I'll ruminate on it, I suppose. My favorite interview in some ways was Brett Christopher's on asset management. People watching should check that out. I mean, it's got about 350,000 views. I suggested it to our producer, Jonah. He's like, what's asset management? Who is this guy? And I was like, look, I don't know. That's why I want to interview him. I knew who Brett was, but not that particular field. He's done books on things like rentierism, which I was more familiar with. But asset management, Blackstone. I was hearing the right talk about all this stuff. And I knew BlackRock. I knew that world, but I didn't know Blackstone, the particular things that asset managers do. So that was a very illuminating episode. Loved that. In terms of moments, I would say it's Slavoj Žižek when I interviewed him, and then I said, Slavoj, where are you off to now? He says, I'm going to go and buy 2 gifts for 2 people. One gift for my ex-wife, the other gift for my ex-wife, as in the other ex-wife. So he was buying 2 gifts for 2 ex-wives, one of which was from a Bloomsbury Waitrose. It was the marzipan fruits, the glazed marzipan fruits. And I said, Slavoj, you should go to Fortnum & Mason for that. You'll get the bag and everything. But he said, no, Bloomsbury Waitrose is my place. So if you ever want to sort of cogitate on Slavoj Žižek's shopping habits, just think of Bloomsbury Waitrose.
You know what? I don't have any crazy ones, but I do have I have a kind of emotional one. So not crazy, but for me, very, very touching. So last March, is not the one just gone, the year before, I interviewed Judith Butler at a Downstream live event in central London, which I was so nervous about for probably a couple of months when I knew that it was on the cards, because Judith Butler is somebody whose work I read when I was a student, right? They're that kind of intellectual monolith, right? You sort of go to the shrine of Judith Butler to worship in the seminar room. And so it was a really big moment, really, really big moment for me. And a week before the interview, my stepdad, who's basically like a dad to me, passed away very, very suddenly, and I was worried that I wouldn't be able to do it. And I just thought that both a combination of wanting to be distracted a bit from grief and also just feeling like I didn't want to let the organization down. I was like, I've got to do it. I've got to do this interview with Judith Butler. And so I got there. and Judith Butler was in the green room, and they were eating, the like pret-a-manger, like hard-boiled eggs that you can get. It
The
was
spinach
just
ones, right?
snacking. Yeah. Just
Oh
snacking
my
away on these
God.
hard-boiled eggs.
Yeah.
And told me the story about how the French actress Isabelle Huppert carries hard-boiled eggs with her wherever she goes in her pockets, and they're always rolling around. And I sort of like phased out when she was when they were talking to me. The way you do when you're grieving, right? You can't always focus on what's in
Yeah.
front of you, especially when you're still kind of in shock. And I apologized and I said, Judith, I'm very, very sorry, but my dad died last week. And they were so kind. They were just so kind and so empathetic. And we got out there in front of everyone, and we actually had so much fun in the conversation. And obviously, they were rigorous. Obviously, they were supremely, formidably intelligent. But I think there were two qualities that I could never have expected from them. The first was their sense of humor, and it's actually quite a goofy sense of humor. And the second was their kindness and their empathy. Why don't you read out the next question, Azza?
I haven't got the questions. Can Gary put them in the chat? I haven't got the questions.
All right. Well, I'll read it out to you while we sort that out.
Yeah,
I'll
put the
read it
link.
out to
Put a
you.
link in the chat.
We've got a question from John Moore. Why are we watching the media willing reform a landslide on Thursday? Is strictly just not enough now. I mean, Aaron, you've just been to Runcorn. You've been paying close attention to the local elections build up. What do you make of it?
They are willing it on, aren't they? I mean, it's just an interesting story. They did this with Corbyn. They also did it before Corbyn, to be honest. I remember in 2015, you could see the media willing on UKIP to win seats in the 2015 election. They got almost 4 million votes, but they didn't win any seats. I think they kept one. They're doing the same now. It just makes for a great story. And this is the thing, for the rest of us, particularly with social media, the constant drama and frenetic nature of political coverage is actually not good for us. It's certainly not good for productive politics, good decision making, good governance. But people like Laura Kuenssberg get a buzz off the constant drama. They feed off it. The biggest gossips I've ever met in my life are all political journalists. All of them. They're unparalleled. You think of the biggest gossip you've ever met, times that by 20, and that's what it takes to be, political editor at the BBC or, LBC political editor. It's people who are addicted to just sharing stuff and to knowing something that somebody else doesn't know and telling somebody the inside scoop. I don't think it's really generative of productive thought. But they are egging on reform to do well. It's an interesting story, right? We've had the collapse of the Conservatives in July 24, and now I think we're going to see the collapse of the Labour Party actually in a quite similar way. The interesting thing for Labour is they could collapse and still be the largest party because the Tories aren't coming back. And that's something I really found in Runcorn, is that, yes, lots of people are upset with Labour. I did meet some Labour voters. I personally think reform will win, but I met remarkably few Tory voters. I met more Greens than Tory voters, and I think that's the saving grace for Labour. But they are egging it on. It's interesting, just as a sort of a side note to that. When we do this stuff, Ash, or if you talk to somebody you don't agree with, or if I do some reporting out in the field, and we come to conclusions that we don't necessarily agree with, or align with our values, people are like, "Oh my God, they got owned." It's like, no, we're journalists. It's actually our job to find out the facts and to understand what's actually going on. I feel bad if I think that I'm feeding our audience shit or what they want to hear. I don't think that's good. I really, and it's something that I think we really are quite good at, Novara, actually, is that we don't just tell our audience what we think they want to hear. I think we're really, really good at that. We have been really good in the last 5 years. And I think in the last general election, we were incredibly rare, right? Every side tells their own people what they want to hear. And we weren't. We were very honest about Starmer and about Labour, and what we've been proven right.
I've got a question for you, which is of my own creation, which is when you were in Runcorn and Helsby, you had that guy quite close to you being like, "Do you consider yourself British? You don't look Muslim."
Mm.
How did you feel in yourself, in your body, emotionally. Because when that kind of things happen to me, sometimes my mind does go a bit blank and I feel a little bit frozen and I can feel like the adrenaline thrumming in my body and I don't feel so laser focused on like how is this interview going. I do suddenly feel a bit of a sense of threat and I think it inhibits my ability to be a good journalist sometimes. I mean, how do you feel when that's happening?
I love it. I love it. I love conflict. As long as people aren't physically fighting each other, I love conflict, and I'm really comfortable with it. It's really, it's kind of screwed up. I think it's because my parents were constantly fighting. I'm just really comfortable with it. I remember once, my mum was looking after this young kid. He was a son of a friend of hers, and sometimes he'd fall out with his mum, and he'd stay with my mum. He was about 15. I remember Gary, nice kid. I remember he went on pilgrimage to Jerusalem. I think, my mum was a Catholic. I think they went to the same church. God knows. But I knew his mum as well. They were like family friends, basically. And he would just come for a few hours if there was a falling out with his mum. And I remember him coming over once, and my mum and dad were screaming at each other. I shouldn't say this, really. It's bad, isn't it? And he put his hands over my ears, like, and I'm watching TV, and I'm like 10 or no, younger, like 6, 7. What the fuck are you doing? They're always like this. What, you think you're going to protect me by doing that for 2 minutes? So, for better or worse, I'm very comfortable with conflict. So in those kinds of situations, it doesn't really. I'm quite a dysfunctional person, so dysfunction sits quite easily with me. I don't have a problem with it. And also maybe like yourself, Ash. Well, it's a bit different because bear in mind I was raised in a very majority white area. So I'm really used to people talking like that. Sometimes it's not very pleasant, and sometimes it's perfectly innocent. Oh, you're a bit, as they would always say when I was a young child, you've got something in you. You've got something in you. What is it? Oh, my dad's Iranian. Oh, there you go. You've got something in you. I knew it. So I guess familiarity and also just a relative comfort with conflict. But you said it puts you off. Can you give an example of that? Because I always think of you as a very unflustered journalist in the field, I have to say.
Well, you know what? Maybe there's a difference between how I come across and what's going on inside my head. Because when somebody and just to make it clear, I don't have a problem with someone being like, oh, like where you from? And like even if it's very blunt. Even if it's very, very blunt. But when I'm detecting in particular racial hostility, I think there's a part of me which, and maybe it's also, it's not just the difference in where we were raised, but also the difference in gender. There's the little bit of fight or flight in me. And so I'm going in my head, making those assessments very quickly. Are you going to hurt me in some way? Like how far could this escalate? How much danger am I in? Like how surrounded am I? Like, I think maybe that's a bit of it. And when it's, when occasionally it's gotten to the point where, people have made comments to me or made it very clear that they dislike me, which is what happened at the farmers' protest. I think I kept my head in the moment, but afterwards, my hands were trembling and my legs were like jelly. So I think I'm okay at the time, maybe, even though I can feel in my body that there's an adrenaline rush. And then it's afterwards when the adrenaline leaves your body that you feel very, very shaky.
Can I just say,
Ooh.
I just felt the way that Lee Anderson responded to that was absolutely disgusting. I thought it was absolutely revolting. All the people I've met from Reform, I've met Rupert Lowe, I've met Tice, I've met Farage. They've been perfectly polite to me. Doesn't mean I agree with them on actually pretty much anything. Doesn't mean they have to like me, but they know as politicians in the public arena, actually, what goes around comes around. And if you call people scum, you're going to be called scum. And if you bully people, you will be bullied. And I think it says something about Lee Anderson that he can't even play that game, right? And it is a game. The fact he can't even play that game, I think, is really striking. And there's lots of nasty people in public life, lots of nasty people. Most people have the common sense to hide it, and he doesn't. And I do think that a big part of Reform's pitch, if they're going to become a major party, is the kind of affability and the joviality of people like Lowe and Farage, right? They're going to have to do that to conceal the harshness of the agenda. You can agree or disagree with it. I mean, I don't agree with much of it, but it's a very harsh agenda, right? They want to change some stuff really substantially, like immigration, asylum, ECHR, power of judges, you name it, right? They want to change loads of stuff. And you kind of obscure that by being quite polite, and he can't even do that. And I thought the way that you dealt with that in the moment, Ash, was really commendable, because I think I would have had steam coming out of my ears, and I probably wouldn't have been so gracious and civilized.
I wasn't gracious or civilized in the privacy of my own room. Before I ask you the next question, which is a really good one, I think you've got something to tell the people, Aaron.
I do. I have a fundraising ask. If you like what we do at Novara Media, if you want to help us build a new media for different politics, if you want to fund a media which is progressive but doesn't have its head in the sand when it comes to what is going on in this country, I'm sure 99% of you watching this know what is going on. You see it with your own two eyes. Things are going in one direction and it's not good. Much of the liberal media, progressive media, isn't really being open about that or proposing substantial solutions. I think that's something we do at Novara Media. You have to agree with all those solutions, but we definitely do it. If you want to help us do more of that, to reach an even bigger audience, become a supporter. I give the National Trust £5 a month. Give Novara Media £5 a month. Go to novara.media/support today. I think the link will be in the description or maybe in the chat. It is how we do all of our work, including Downstreams, right? I think, Ash, you and I are creating one of the better interview series on YouTube in Britain. And we do it thanks to our supporters. They're making that possible. So £1, £2, £5, anything. We generally recommend 1 hour of your wage a month. But if you can't afford that and it's just £1, but you want to contribute, go for it. We take that with real gratitude, actually. We love our supporters. So if you want to join them, go to novara.media/support.
I've got a great question here from Aura KL. How do you determine the political tone of your journalism as individuals and as an organisation, whilst allowing room to grow and learn new perspectives?
I think you should answer this, Ash. This is you. This is you all over.
Well, I mean, this is so one of the things that maybe lots of people don't know is that the nature of Novara, because we are growing as an organization, but we're still quite small, is that, if you've been here for a long time, you do more jobs in addition to, the job that you signed up for. So one of the jobs that I do behind the scenes is I chair the editorial workshop that we have every week. Stephen, the wonderful Stephen Methven, has also taken on a lot of that work with me. He now chairs half of them. Thank goodness for Stephen. But this was part of an idea of going, well, how do we have a space to talk about politics? How do we talk about the editorial points of view that we want to take? What are the ones that we maybe want to stay away from without it being too much like the 10 commandments have come down from Mount Sinai? How can we have a pluralistic organization, but also one where we can puzzle stuff out together? So a lot of that work about tone is being done collectively. It's happening within editorial workshops. It's the meeting that I look forward to having every week. And every single week, something comes out of it from my colleagues who, are teaching me new things every day and challenging my politics and challenging my editorial sensibilities every single day. And it allows us to work across the different sections, because you've got video team working on their video stuff like Novara Live and Downstream and a report. You've got articles, you've got audio. Normally, because obviously it's time consuming, you can't have a lot of time for cross-pollination and chit-chat. But this meeting every week is how we do it. I think that there's something which is as important as political tone, which is also something about style and presentation and voice. And I don't know about you, Aaron, but for me, one of the really important things that I think I've learned, and this Thursday, by the way, it's going to be my 10-year anniversary of working for Novara. It'll be 10 years to the day since you first got me on to do an episode of Novara Live about the Baltimore riots. And I think that at that time, I took a lot of academic knowledge as my source for understanding the world. And that's still really, really important. I'm not one of those people that thinks, oh, university, useless. But I've become more critical and skeptical of some of that knowledge and critical of the ways in which it's been developed without sometimes a lot of contact with the real world. And especially that it's delivered in a style which operates as a kind of barrier for entry. And so I had a lot of bad habits in writing. My sentences were too long. Why use one clause when 15 will do? And it's over the last 10 years working with Novara, seeing what works with the audience, seeing what doesn't work, that I've really learned that an idea is only as good as your ability to communicate it. And that means appealing to humor, that means appealing to people's sense of fun, even when you're discussing something really, really serious, in order to make it connect with your audience. But what about you, Aaron? Like, how did you develop your journalistic voice, your style, your register?
In a similar way to you, right? I do think that doing stuff to a large audience is a really good way of disciplining your worst kind of academic impulses. There was one bit of feedback about Novara which really made me laugh. It was an interview which got 1 million views, and there was like a left-wing academic, and it's not some famous left-wing academic. It's somebody who's like a minor left-wing academic. Sorry to be a cliche, and I'm not criticizing them. It's just this is how their brain worked. They were saying, "Oh, Novara's irrelevant. They got that guy with 1 million views on," which is to say, relevance is not mass appeal. It's not even the content of your argument. It's, do I like this person? And look, you can do that. There's a ton of podcasts out there and shows and blogs, etc., which talk and they only talk to people they like. Get it? And sometimes that's really good, right? Because sometimes those debates and those people and those ideas aren't in sufficient circulation. You still learn stuff. But if you're trying to build a media organization pushing politics and civil society and the conversation in certain directions at scale, like a real scale, then you can't afford to be like that. You have to talk like a normal person. And I'm still very aware that, you and I, Ash, I know when I go to Runcorn, they think I'm posh, whatever, right? Because I'm Southern University educated. Like it's that simple. And that's fine, right? As long as you're polite to people and you listen to them, generally they give you that in return. They reciprocate. So I think it did take a long time. It took a couple of years to get those worst impulses out of me. I do think as I get older, that higher education, particularly the humanities, which you talk about so deftly in your book, Ash, I do think it's a kind of psyop actually to almost minimize the political potentiality of intelligent working class, lower middle class kids. It's how do you obsess over the minutiae of language rather than attempt to take on material conditions? How do you talk in the most arcane, obscure language? Like it's like a psyop. I mean, it's not, but it's like a psyop. I mean, my explanation for it is it really is status games for the middle class. It's basically what academia has become. It's status games, as Kissinger once said. The debates and arguments in geopolitics and international relations are like nothing compared to the academy because the stakes are so small when it comes to the academy. And so trying to have that culture and then putting it onto big P politics, electoral politics, big social movements, engaging in mass media is like literally pointless because you're talking in a different language. You want different objectives. It's just, for me, it's not politically serious. And that's a journey that I've been on over 15 years. I think it's a journey Novara's been on, but it's a journey that Novara's on because it's responding to the conditions of our era, right? Like the one thing, and we've been wrong about many things, the one thing we were right about when we started this in 2010, 2011, James and I, is we said that the economic model we have post-2008, post-crisis, will not pick up, living standards will not get better, they will stagnate or get worse. That will have political implications. People will look for somebody to blame, perfectly rational. They will eventually blame the wrong people or in part the wrong people because people aren't offering sufficiently clear and comprehensible explanations otherwise. Now, in the meantime, people like Novara.media have done that. Gary Stevenson has done that. By the way, it doesn't mean we're right about everything. It doesn't mean we're wrong about lots of things. But we were right to say that the economic model we had inherited wasn't going to work, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. We're living in the ruins of the 2008, pre-2008 model. We're still living in the ruins of that. And we came to terms with that really quickly. Legacy politics broadly still hasn't, by the way. The problem with the Starmer program is he hasn't. I will simply grow the economy because I have a nice haircut and I talk with a really sort of, adenoidal voice. Well, no, you won't. That's the problem. What are you going to do? They can't grow the economy. So now they're having to keep on making cuts and to increase taxes just to cover the basics of actually, fixing the NHS or whatever, because the economy won't grow. We said that a long time ago. Novara's developed, our styles developed, our views have developed, our critique of the academy has developed. But the one thing we were right about was our critique of the economy post-2008. Shall I ask you a question, Ash?
Yeah, go for it. But before you do, 10 people have signed up as Novara Media supporters. So thank you to Peter, thank you to Alec, thank you to Evelyn. And before you ask the question, Aaron, I've just got one point of fact to raise with you. In Runcorn, people didn't think that you're posh because of your accent, because you're from the South and because you're university educated. It's because they know as well as I do that you drink M&S tea exclusively.
It's delightful, isn't
Busted.
it? All
right, what's your question?
Don't pretend you don't pinch those tea bags, Ash.
I know.
I count them every time I come in. Okay? I don't pretend. That's good.
Yeah, I go into your cubby hole and I nick the teas. But I'm a resourceful little raccoon.
I was listening another great Novara Media show, which people I'm sure are aware of. It's taking over the internet. Is of course If I Speak with you and Moya, and I'm an avid listener of that. And it did make me laugh when I think it was Moya. You were talking about my M&S tea, and Moya was talking about how, it wasn't. You said one of our colleagues, puts his tea bags, his M&S Gold tea bags in the cupboard, and Moya was like, "That doesn't, that's not very socialist of him." And she's kind of got a point, right? Sharing is caring, but I'm not sharing the M&S Gold tea bags.
Fair enough. What's your question, though? It's a really interesting one, I think.
I have an interesting question. Before I share that question, though, there is an event, Ash, isn't there? With you and Moya? Speaking of If I Speak?
There is. We're doing a live If I Speak at Earth Dalston on the 21st of May. We are in the last stages of finalising our very special guest, so that's going to be announced soon. And tickets are selling like proverbial hotcakes. So if you like a little bit of gossip, cracking the occasional joke, then please join us in a few weeks.
Can't wait. Ash, contemporary politics question. What do you think it would take? This is from Callum. What do you think it would take for there to be a leadership challenge against Sir Keir Starmer?
What it would take would be for Morgan McSweeney to remove his hand from the meat puppet and select another vessel. I think that we all know by now that Keir Starmer is a man who doesn't really have politics of his own. He's an empty vessel animated by the ambition and the vision of others. Morgan McSweeney, as you've said many times, is someone who has two preoccupations. One's the marginalisation of the left within the Labour Party. The other is zeroing in on those, Tory Labour switchers. Your video report from Runcorn suggests it's anecdotal data, but anecdata is still valuable, that perhaps Keir Starmer is losing that cohort of voters. So maybe Morgan McSweeney and the others jumped ship. The question is, who would they go for? I mean, Wes Streeting, despite being puffed up by the establishment media, is quite unpopular. He's unpopular amongst the membership. How will you get a Labour right candidate past the membership after they've experienced such a profound betrayal in Keir Starmer? I don't know. Maybe they'll try and do it by introducing rule changes at conference. That's again difficult to square with the unions, who are the real power. They don't want anything that's going to weaken their say over who the next Labour Party leader is. And I think that, I can see there being a stitch up where maybe Keir Starmer steps down so close to a general election that the argument is that there's no time for a membership vote. can imagine that happening, but that would involve uh, the mother of all stitch ups to pull off. I'm not even sure if Morgan McSweeney has that in him. I mean, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think if they were to replace Starmer, I think even in any case, the leader after Starmer is going to have to come from the north of England. I think. I mean, maybe they could come from Wales or Scotland, but I think they probably, if what I think is going to happen happens, they're going to have to come from the north of England. I think probably the northwest of England. The northwest is still a Labour base. People talk about the north, and like even like in 2019, the northwest was pretty robust. Greater Manchester are incredibly robust, even though it had really large Brexit voting towns around there. And I have a feeling Labour are going to lose lots of seats in the northeast and northwest. The West Midlands, I think, they're going to lose even more seats. But the West Midlands, the Tories have always had a sort of, there's always been a working class Tory vote in the West Midlands that's been pretty successful. But I think Labour could be in really big trouble in the northwest too, which gives you two options right now. Angela Rayner's one. I think Angela Rayner actually is really liked still by lots of people who despise Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham. Again, it's anecdotal, but I met quite a few people who just hated Keir Starmer and quite like Andy Burnham. And look, 10 minutes in the job, they might hate Andy Burnham too. People can be very fickle, but that would be my bet. And if the Labour right want to be in power, they're probably going to have to back one of those two people. But that's not how they work, right? That they don't work. They don't work through trying to build coalitions with other people. They do it through smashing anyone to their left. That's how their mind works. And look, you can do that in a two-party system. You can, because it's either you or the Tories are in government. We're moving away from that now. And I know lots of emphasis has been on reform, but there's also the SNP. They're not going anywhere. There's the Lib Dems. They've got 70 odd seats. They could get even more at the next election. The Greens could get 15 seats in the next election. I think they probably will actually. So 10 plus anyway. So I think it really challenges the whole worldview of the Labour right and people like McSweeney. And I who knows? But I don't think they're going to grasp these questions until they're given the boot. Let me ask.
I've got a really interesting question for you. A really interesting one. So first, there have been more sign-ups. So thank you to Jay, to David, to Robin, Patrick, Richard, and Kwaku. This question is from Planet Arium, and I'll tell you why I want to ask you this after I pose it to you. Online misogyny seems to be rapidly on the rise with young guys. How do we combat it? And the reason why I ask you this is twofold. One is, Aaron, a formerly young man yourself, still young in the grand scheme of things. But the other is also, I know you've got a beautiful baby girl. You must be thinking about the kind of world she's growing up into, the kinds of, young men that she may encounter. I mean, what do you think of as a strategy for combating misogyny, and how worried are you about it? With my lovely, gorgeous niece.
I am worried about it. It's hard to say how worried I should be because obviously so much of it is online. So much of it's online. Some of it bleeds into offline stuff. I wasn't the biggest fan of Adolescence on Netflix. But one thing that it did. Well, I wasn't.
How come?
I thought it was interesting, but I didn't think it was like this epoch-defining piece of like drama that they should be showing in schools. And I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was, as a parent, I thought it was really challenging. That's what I took away from Adolescence was they had two kids. One turns out really nicely. One's a fuck up, and then they asked themselves, well, what did we do differently with these two? I think that is such a great, and that happens all the time, right? What did we do differently? What could we have done differently? And one of the things that Adolescence did get right, though, is how online culture can bleed into offline culture, and these two things aren't sort of disentangled. I think the number one thing, and this is where I get people upset maybe, the number one thing in terms of combating this, I think right now, and maybe people are going to really strongly disagree, is getting phones out of schools. The number one thing. Like people say in politics, there are no quick fixes. This is a really quick fix. You cannot have your phone in school. So there are a bunch of places trialing this. Obviously, Australia's bringing in certain laws around social media and age. You could just basically have like a box at school that kids have to put it in. That's the first one. Second one, I think we probably do need a conversation about social media and age limits. You don't need to be really conservative about it. I mean, right now, if you start an account with Meta, for instance, for an Instagram product, you're meant to be 13 years old. That's how old you're meant to be in the United States, right? You sign something, which is I'm 13. You're signing a contract to give your data to a major multinational company, one of the biggest companies in the world. To do that, you need to be a certain age or above. And of course, loads of kids lie. And I think just enforcing that, which again shouldn't sound radical, right? Just enforce the literal regulations which already exist, I think would be a really great stepping stone. I think as well, online pornography, we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. This is not being censorious or prudish. The idea that a child of 8 or 9 can find an online pornography site as easily as going onto Amazon or I don't know, Hamley's website or Peppa Pig, right? No, but seriously, and that's not. I don't think pornography is like bad, or I'm not making that judgment. I think it can be, but I'm not making that judgment. I think there should be some friction, right? When I was a kid, if you wanted to see that stuff, you'd have to find a magazine and you'd have to buy it, or you'd have to get somebody else to buy it.
You'd have to wait until a page from the magazine blew into the playground. Because I remember that happening at primary school, like everyone crowding around it.
Yeah.
I mean, look,
that seems healthy.
I agree with you.
Quite
Well, I agree with you. I also think, I think a few things about it. Obviously, not a young man, never been a young man. But I think a few things is that one, I'm completely in agreement with you about, having smartphones available to children all the time is awful. Like, it's completely fucked my brain, right? Aaron, I've seen how late you tweet sometimes. Like, I know that you're just as addicted to social media as I am. Putting crack pipes into the hands of children effectively, crack pipes which make them anxious, hyper aware of how they're being perceived, that they can be bullied relentlessly 24 hours a day, regardless of whether they're at school or at home. I mean, like, I just think that's obviously a bad thing. The second is that there are very few child-only online spaces, whereas actually there were quite a lot when I was a kid, whether it was something like Neopets or Habbo Hotel or like any of these spaces. Instead, what you have is children on adult social media sites like Instagram or TikTok, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that's really significant. And then the third thing is, I am increasingly of the mind that online pornography is very harmful to people, to men and to women both, and that actually it's not about prudishness, because actually, what you see in the most popular and accessible online porn is a very, very narrow sliver of what sex can be. And actually, there is a whole world out there of pleasure, of sex, of sensuality, of understanding yourself, of understanding your partner, which is just never ever depicted. And people, especially when they're younger, right, they look at porn kind of as like, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Tell me what I'm supposed to do. Because you know what? The diagrams in science don't tell me what I'm supposed to do with another human being. All right. They don't. And so actually I think that it fills the space of sex education, and it's deafening, right? It's like what you see in online pornography, it's so aggressive. It's like the decibels are just ear splitting. And I think it silences you to it silences you to the signals of what you actually might want. So it's not coming from a place of prudishness. It's actually coming from a place of sex positivity. I've got a question here from Mr. Squinty Mint is Skint. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to hear something crazy? This is a spoiler because it's actually a Downstream that's forthcoming with Jonathan Haidt. Ooh. This is crazy. Jonathan Haidt wrote, The Anxious Generation. He's written the book on all of this stuff. This is crazy, Ash. Prepare to have your mind blown. The Instagram app knows when you have deleted multiple selfies. There's an algorithm for this. And so it's optimized for young women deleting multiple selfies to be the most exposed to the sale of beauty products. Isn't that
Mm.
insane? Isn't that insane? A 13-year-old kid doesn't like how they look. They'll delete loads of selfies and then makeup. Like, I mean, that to me borders on actually an abusive way to treat young girls.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
and and we're not just allowing that to happen, we're allowing people to profit by doing that. Anyway, sorry.
No, no, no. I mean, look, I think that this is actually something that I want to find more of a space for on Downstream. Like, and what's great about Downstream is that it allows you to get into the nuance of something. So it's not just about, what's the top line, what's the slogan. Is that I do want to find somebody. I mean, once upon a time it would have been Naomi Wolf, but now, she's mad as a wasp sandwich. But I do want to talk about the history of beauty standards and what it does, not just to women, but to people. Body dysmorphia is on the rise amongst young men as well. But I've got this question from Mr. Squinty Mint is Mint. We're going to race through these last
Yeah, let's be
questions.
really quick, right?
The Greens have an image problem. How do they overcome looking like middle class elitists in the absence of a proper left wing party?
I'll do like 20 seconds. You do 20 seconds, right? Let's just go through these. They need a really, really charismatic, intelligent, good-looking leadership cadre of 5 to 10 people, all who look good in different ways, appeal to different audiences, who all sound intelligent in different ways to different audiences. That's the really generic answer. People don't often like hearing that, right? But leadership. And the Greens, I think, lack, partly because they don't have many MPs, they don't have a leadership cadre, which isn't to say that you need lots of people leading. You need lots of leadership. You're going to have people running for mayor, etc. And then, of course, you want a national leader. And I'm sorry, I agree with Zizek on this. We kind of need a populist left-wing leader who is not the same as Trump, right? I'm not a Stalinist like him. But you do need somebody who can try and make the weather at the national level when it comes to political debates. And I think the Greens really lack that. They've got people who can win in local constituencies, and that's great. But I think you're going to need something else. You're going to need a really sharp, charismatic, good media performer, very smart national leader.
Well, look, I completely agree with you. I think there's a problem with the leadership. I don't think the co-leaders thing works because you know what? 2 people no one's ever heard of is worse than 1 person no one's ever heard of, right? It's just worse. So 1 leader. Second thing is that there would probably have to be some process of party recomposition, right? There are socialists in the Green Party. It is not a socialist party. How you get it to become a socialist party, it ain't always going to be pretty and it ain't always going to be good. They don't always have populist instincts. They certainly don't have populist delivery. I don't believe them when they say that they're angry. I don't believe most Greens when they say that they're angry. And I think there's one last thing, which is they're having to compete with a very, very well-established data operation that Labour has. The Greens, for canvassing, don't even have an app yet. They don't even have a canvassing app. The data operation varies a lot from constituency to constituency. So some constituencies have really hot data. Others, because there's a certain window in which you can get the data from previous elections, they let it lapse. So then between elections, they're having to start from zero again to build up a data picture of who's there and who might support them. So I think that, leadership, definitely, party recomposition, certainly. But then the other is that bringing people in with some experience of, doing really good data-backed campaigns, crucial, because Labour have it. Labour absolutely have it. Okay, next
Shall I
question
ask
from
this?
Music Man. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, no, you can you? Oh yeah, no, it's this one. Yeah, go for it.
Let me ask you, because I really want to hear you on this, Ash. It's a great question. This is from James. What conspiracy theories do you find credible?
This is when everyone's going to lose respect for me. Loads. Because also what we get told is a conspiracy, then, not long after becomes accepted fact. The incredible Vincent Bevins book, The Jakarta Method, spells this out. The covert CIA operations to discredit socialist, communist leaders during the Cold War era. More recently with the Nord Stream pipeline, people thought, oh, the Russians blew up their own pipeline. And then we were supposed to just go along with it when it was screamingly obvious that wasn't the case. This isn't a conspiracy because it's actually very, I would say, persuasively evidenced. It is my belief that the Metropolitan Police planted the gun that was found following the killing of Mark Duggan. They found it over some railings many meters away from his body. No one ever saw him throw the gun in the seconds in which he exited the car. I think it was planted. And then the last one, and this always makes me laugh because it's the thing which reminds me of my late grandmother who passed away a couple of years ago. She was a funny, mischievous woman. And she always said this. Whenever something about the royal family came on the TV, she'd look at you and she'd go, they killed Diana, And it got to the point where she was like, the Queen was driving the other car. Like she fully thought that the Queen was in the tunnel in Paris, and you could not tell her that that wasn't the case. When Meghan and Harry got married, she was like, stay away from tunnels, young Meghan, stay away from tunnels. What about you?
I'm with Kevin Costner. I think the CIA killed JFK.
Yeah.
I think it's undoubtable. Actually, I think it was done in cahoots with the mafia. So when people say, "Oh, it was the mafia," no, I think it was both of them. I think Dr. David Kelly, on the balance of probability, was killed by somebody. I've read actually some really good books about this, and the truth is the evidence is not conclusive. The evidence is in no way well, obviously not, because otherwise, there'd be a much stronger case for him being killed. But the response of the government to how he died, Alastair Campbell, the Labour government, etc., is inexplicable. I actually want to talk to the author of that book at some point. So Dr. David Kelly died in incredibly mysterious circumstances. We aren't being told the whole story, basically. JFK, and then what other conspiracy theories? This is obvious. The BBC at a senior level is obviously packed with people that work for the deep state, including security services.
Oh.
Obviously.
Yeah. Duh.
It's not even a conspiracy theory.
Okay, all right. Here's one. If you had to pick a Novara Media staff member most likely to be working for the security services, who would you pick?
I won't say it because it's rude to them. But I will. It's a compliment. There's somebody who works on operations for us. Their name begins with P, and it's a younger woman. She is so diligent and good at her job and conscientious and outstanding and motivated that, those are the stories you hear about plants, right? From the start. I don't think you are a plant, okay? P, we love you. You're an amazing employee. You're a big reason why Novara is doing so well. It's a compliment in a way, right? Yeah. I've had this thrown at me before, so don't take it personally. So that would be my sort of view. Who would you say?
Oh, Gary, because he can drive.
It's true.
We don't have many drivers on staff. We don't have many drivers.
Michael Walker is definitely not a cop because he can't drive. It's so true. And he has a dangerous dog.
Oh, and also, I was going to say, police have well-trained dogs. This one from Philip Lewis. How long does it take to prepare for a Downstream interview? So how long, and also how? Like, what do you do, Aaron, to get your head in the right space?
I'll be super quick. So somebody like Josephine Quinn, amazing book, 400 pages. You obviously read the book really diligently. That can take at least a week, sometimes longer. And then on top of that, I would spend probably a day and a half writing the questions. But then you get others like, I'm trying to think of a recent one. Others which are responding to the media cycle. You're not reading a book, and maybe just takes half a day. So it depends on the author. If you're talking about a book as well, it's going to take a long time. It takes at least several days. How about you?
So I'm one of those people that can read fast, and I think it comes from doing English literature. And you had to, you'd spend all week getting pissed, and then you've got to do your essay, and you're like, "Shit, I've got to read Wuthering Heights in 3 hours." So I can read fast, but it takes more time for me to really think about what is the person going to respond to in the room, because so much of it is about eye contact, so much of it is about what is the kind of rapport that you can build, and you've got to do it really, really quickly. They come in, they might have done 3 or 4 interviews earlier that day, and you've got to try and make them feel that this is
Yeah.
the first time they're hearing these questions, the first time they're
Yeah.
having the conversation. Also got to talk about our Downstream producers, the inimitable Jonah and the wonderful Ceci, who's a new addition to the team, and both of them so important for how the sausage gets made. So Jonah is just so great at putting himself in the position of what is somebody on YouTube who's, trying to get to sleep or cooking their dinner or whatever. What are the questions they're going to have? What is it that they're going to want to know? And so, when I'm getting too in the weeds about the things I'm interested in, Joan is a really important counterweight, being like, no, 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 no. Like, here is a story that the viewer is going to be bringing to what they're watching. And you've got to, interact with that. And the thing that Ceci has been absolutely wonderful at, I mean, just like, you know, she's demonstrated her value immeasurably, and she's only joined the team a few weeks ago, is supplementary research. So it means that I can really get stuck into a book, maybe 2, and Ceci will go through all the other interviews that somebody's done, all these random bits of videos, and pull out biographical details and little tidbits, which make it for a really interesting interview journey. Because that's the thing, is that each interview I think of as a journey, which is you're starting off in one place and you're ending up in another. So it's not just about, here are the questions and I've got to tick my way through them. Like, each one is trying to deepen the rapport or push them a bit further away from where they feel comfortable, whilst at the same time not breaking the bond between me and them and making them want to walk out. So don't always get it right, but it's a work in progress. Do you want to do the next question? The final question?
It's a great thing is that you don't bore the person you're asking questions of. Don't ask them boring questions. There's one really good question. Maybe we can ask 2 more. I don't know, but this is definitely a great question. Maybe we'll answer this for 10 minutes anyway. This is from Waluigi Mangione. Ash, what are your non-political hobbies?
Couldn't possibly say, officer. What are my non-political hobbies? I am such a homebody at heart. Like, I really, really love cooking, like inviting friends over. Like, I live with my husband and my housemate, and both of them, really are my best friends. And I'm lucky enough to live very close to lots of my very close friends. So I just like going to people's houses, eating something delicious and pasta based, having a glass of wine. I would have said that football is one of my favorite hobbies. It's actually not a favorite hobby at the moment. It is a source of agony, pain, humiliation, and misery. I like reading novels. Love reading novels. I like writing in my spare time. I do a lot of yoga. Because gotta find ways to drop down into your body. But I just don't have a particularly interesting life, and that's how I like it. What about you?
I just don't have much time anymore. I mean, I walk the dog maybe like most days, at least half the week. That's an hour. But between Novara stuff, obviously young daughter, it's really hard. I do probably work out 4 days a week, and that's like 90 minutes a day. That's probably a hobby. And that just sounds so, it's just horrible, isn't it, Ash? Like, there's no, like, what's the end game? Like, there's nothing. Okay, I just don't want my sort of body to decay. Although it's quite fun, like having little sleep. And I've been doing intermittent fasting this year. It's really interesting. I'll have 4 hours sleep and I'll be fasted, not eaten for 16 hours, and I'll have an amazing workout. And it's really useful, because you think everything has to be perfect for you to perform well, but it's not true. Like, I'm sure it's the same for you. You've had great talks, or you've done great interviews on 5 hours sleep. Wouldn't recommend it. Most of the time, it's not going to work. But, actually, you can pull it out of the hat if you've got the right attitude about it. So, yeah, I love working out. I do love reading. I just don't have enough time. I love reading fiction, like you. I love design. If I could, if somebody said, "Here's £1 million, what are you going to do?" Besides like giving it to Novara.media and helping it expand, I would probably open a bookshop. I love books. I think they're life changing for people, and I think one of the big tasks for Novara, ironically because we're based online, is to be a remedy in a world that I think is clearly moving towards a post-literary culture, which is the big idea with Downstream, right? Big ideas, interesting people, long-form journalism, and that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, reading and working out. I guess maybe, let's say if we have a second child, maybe in 4 or 5 years' time, what would I like to do as a hobby? I guess probably gardening and literary Persian.
Yes, literary Persian. I do have a gardening quandary at the moment, which is I planted some jasmine last year, but all it's growing is leaves. I'm getting nothing but leaves, and there were no flowers on it last year. So
Is it sun facing?
I'm not. It is. It is sun facing. It gets loads of light, but no
Is
flowers
it
yet.
warm? Have you got it
I'm
against a
trying a new
wall?
fertilizer. Yep,
Huh. Okay. That is interesting.
I know. We're gonna have to see. I think, you know what? If Novara gave me the sack, I'd retrain as a chef. Is what I would do.
I bet your food is
I would
delicious.
love to retrain as a chef, because the thing that's annoying is that my knife skills are horrible. Flavor, great. Presentation and knife skills, atrocious. But I think we may have to wrap up here, you know?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. Just as a testament to how intelligent Jonah is. He was talking about Tony Blair doing head ups with Kevin Keegan, and how it was a really subliminal sign of competence. He was like, if I was advising a politician, and if you're watching this and you advise a politician for a living, this is for free, I would teach them how to chop an onion like a professional chef, and then get them
Yeah,
on
without looking.
and then like get them on Saturday Morning Kitchen, and then that would just blow up on social media. And I thought, that's so darn clever. I'm so glad you work
Smart.
for
You
us.
know what? Jonah, so the thing me and Jonah have in common is that we both have the same psychological disorder, which is we support Tottenham Hotspur. We both really like football. We both like trainers. And I wore a new pair of trainers into the office this week. So they're a birthday present from my husband. And they're the Nike Total 90s, which are the ones that Figo wore. Roberto Carlos, I think, also wore them as well. I was obsessed with them when I was a kid. You know, like when your idea of what's cool, like fixes at the age of 12. And so I was like, I've seen that Nike have done a re-release. I really want them. Husband got them for me for my birthday. And when I walked into the office, Jonah was like, "Are you wearing the Total 90s, cuz?" And that's how I was like, never leave Novara. I need you in that
Job
office
for life.
always. Yeah, job for life. You're the only person who notices my trainers. Anyway, thank you all so much. Thank you to Dean, to Anthony, Michelle, and Alistair for becoming our new supporters. We've had more than 20 signups this evening. Go to novara.media/support today if you want to become one of them. We've got so much special content coming up in the next couple of weeks, so please keep your eyes peeled. But I'm going to have to wrap it up. I've got a friend of mine cooking me dinner downstairs, so I got to go eat some pasta.
Cheers, Ash. And just to repeat, we've got the local elections obviously this week. Novara's coverage at the end of this week and next week is going to be elite. So look forward to that.
All right. Thank you all. Good night.